Hey guys, this is Mike 1013 for FlopTurnRiver. Today I want to talk about using stats or using reads to make adjustments in your game. And often you can make an adjustment that seems obvious, but there are other more subtle adjustments you can make from the same piece of information. So I'm going to look at a few hands here and discuss the possible adjustments we can make based upon what we know about our opponent. So before we get started, let me discuss the HUD stats that I have up here. First number, VPIP, second number, PFR, third number, 3-bet percent. On the next line we have C-bet and fold to C-bet. And those are really the only stats we'll be using today. So let's get started here with the first hand. We have deuces in the cutoff. It folds to us, we open, and we get called by the button. And both other opponents fold, and we see a flop here. Now, there's one thing right away, I think, that will be beneficial to us, and that's this opponent's fold to C-bet stat, which is 68%. And if we look at the pop-up, that's over a pretty good sample size. So I think it's a pretty reliable stat. And so what adjustments can we make based upon this stat? I think the most obvious adjustment is we can be c-betting a ton of flops when we have air. He's just going to be folding so often. And when we have a marginal hand, we might even not c-bet if we think we can get better action from future streets. With the hand we actually have, I think c-betting is best because with such a high fold to c-bet, he's probably folding better pocket pairs than we have. And he's probably folding things that flip with us. If we had something like tens, I think there's a good case for checking here and hoping to get more action from him on future streets because there's fewer overcards that can hurt us. But as it is, I think we should go ahead and c-bet here, and he's going to fold a large equity share a lot of the time. If we think about other adjustments we can make in general when this opponent is in the pot, well, pre-flop, I think if he limps ahead of us, and it's likely that he's limping a lot since his stats are 18-5 for VPIP and PFR, we should be isolating him really wide because that pre-flop action is going to, well, he's going to probably fold immediately some of the time, which is good for us. And when he calls, it might even be better for us, because we're going to win the extra money from his pre-flop call a lot. You know, when he's folding 68% of flops, we're just going to be printing money from him, basically. Another related adjustment we can make is, since his range for continuing on the flop is so narrow, when he does call, we want to be very selective about our two barrels. His range is going to be pretty strong. It's not going to have too many light floats in it or some kind of like marginal showdown hands. So when he does call on the flop, we'll want to exercise caution on the turn against him. Okay, let's take a look at another hand. In this hand we have Ace-Jack in early position. We open. Opponent on the button calls. The blinds fold. We see a flop. And now this guy looks like a reg. His stats are 16-10, and his c-bet and fold to c-bet stats look reasonable. So we bet here. We have two overs, and we do have the backdoor nut flush draw and a backdoor straight draw. He calls, and the turn's a queen. That's a pretty good card to barrel. It's an overcard to the board. So we bet again, and he calls again. And then the river's a complete brick. It didn't complete any draws. And the fact that he just called on such a wet board means he might be weak. He might have one pair. You know, he might have like ace-9 or something, or he might have pocket tens and not want to fold the turn, but now be willing to fold. So I think this is usually a pretty good spot to bluff. So we bet again, he calls, and he shows 9-8 suited for flop top two pair. Okay, so this is a really strong hand for not having raised at any point. And I think we can take away some important pieces of information from this hand. The first is he might be susceptible to fancy play syndrome. If he was just a fish, we could say, okay, he's a calling station, he doesn't know what he's doing. But because he's a reg, and he did not raise 2 pair at any point in the hand, even when the flop was pretty wet, I think that's a pretty good indication of being susceptible to fancy play syndrome. Another thing is, when he calls, we have to expect his ranges to be stronger than normal, because he's calling with hands as strong as top 2 pair. So our bluffs on later streets might not be as successful as we might hope, and we especially can't put him on a capped range, really, when he takes passive moves on wet boards. Another thing we have to consider is, in those cases where he does raise the flop, he's probably bluff heavier than normal, since he's just calling with hands as strong as top 2 pair. So in future, when he does raise flops, we should be more inclined to call if we have showdown value, and to 3-bet with our monsters, and also as a bluff sometimes. Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to always consider how information you get from your opponent will be useful, not only in the exact situation that you've seen, but in other related situations as well. Later.